Tonight, we find out how much the NDP's platform promises will cost.
It's an opportunity to take a bad situation and turn it around for something good.
Why 2 Meadow Lake public servants were sent home for wearing orange shirts. And Saskatchewan's film industry appears to be getting back on track.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Friday, October 4th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams in for Sam McKeag. Thanks for joining us. The NDP has released the costing of its election platform. Leader Carla Beck says an NDP government would balance the budget in its 4th year, but the Saskatchewan Party has labeled the document dishonest. Adam Hunter explains.
Over the last few weeks, the NDP has made campaign promises to spend on education, health, and for affordability relief. Friday, leader Carla Beck revealed the financial impact of those promises. The NDP is pledging an extra $200 million a year in education spending and more than $100 million a year in health funding. Beck says the investments are needed.
And I think it will make people of this province angry to know that the government has told us it can't be done. It's very clear that their lack of investment in education, in healthcare, in offering cuts to Saskatchewan people has been a choice that they have made. They could have done it all along. They chose not to.
The NDP is projecting a deficit in year 1 of $163 million with a surplus in year 4 of $57 million. It says it would cut the Marshal Service and reinvest that money into hiring police officers and mental health and addictions initiatives. Later in the day, the Saskatchewan Party held its own news conference. It claims the NDP's platform has a $3 billion hole in it. Campaign co-chair Donna Harpower says her party's platform will not include big-ticket promises.
It is much more modest than what the NDP are promising. However, we will be very forthright as to how much our platform initiatives will cost.
The NDP leader says the Sask Party's recent budgets have missed badly on government's initial projections while adding to the debt.
I'll take no lessons from this government, from this premier, when he has increased, doubled the debt in this province in 6 years. $14 billion.
Harpower argues the provincial debt is manageable and that the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and crop conditions from bad weather each played a role in those missed budget projections.
No one can predict any of those 3 events, or did they predict any of those 3 events? It caused unusually large swings, and I do acknowledge that we've had some unusually large swings in our most recent budgets.
The NDP says Harpower and the Sask Party misinterpreted the NDP's platform document, and it says all spending has been accounted for. As for the Sask Party's costed platform, Harpower says it will be released fairly soon. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
Meanwhile, Scott Moe says a re-elected Sask Party government will expand tax credits for people buying their first home or renovating an existing one. The home renovation tax credit was introduced as a temporary measure during the pandemic, but Moe says his party would now make it permanent if elected. The Sask Party also says it would also increase the tax credit for first-time home buyers.
We understand that Saskatchewan families and individuals are struggling with the cost of living pressures like other Canadians are, and that's why you've seen a significant focus this first week by the Saskatchewan Party on the very affordability issues that are impacting Saskatchewan families.
Moe says low-income seniors in care homes would also be eligible for a subsidy of $3,500 a month, an increase of $1,000. Well, with week 1 of the election campaign now wrapping up, we've heard a number of promises from numerous parties, but Leader Post political commentator Murray Mandrick says the recent nurses' protest is also an issue to watch.
They are legitimately angry. In the context of this election, it's going to be interesting to watch how widespread that anger is. This has been a pretty quiet campaign up until yesterday and yesterday's announcement, but I think that there is a simmering undertone here that Scott Moe is not going to like. You know, he won a nice quiet campaign where he moved from ashram to ashram and very quietly, found peace and joy in renouncing government policies that Brad Wall put in 17 years ago, and he's now expanding. But that does not necessarily seem to be working for him. He is getting it from the right in terms of the Sask United Party, and Mr. Remick's press conference this week unveiling his platform, which looked to me like the platform that the backbench of the Sask Party really wanted to unveil. And he's getting it from the left right now. And notwithstanding what Tracy Zambori and others are saying about we'll wait and see and put both parties' feet to the fire, I think we all can figure out who that rally was aimed at yesterday. You know,
I want to ask you a bit more about Sask United Party and the policy that you think would speak to some backbenchers there, but of the Sask Party. But Adam, what is the mood? Because sometimes even more than announcements, you just get a sense of things out there.
I think the one, and we'll hear from Scott Moe and Regina today, so I haven't been able to see him yet, but I've been watching all the announcements. And what stands out to me from that, just watching them, is it's Scott Moe in front of a Sask Party backdrop, and Scott Moe only. And Scott Moe's answering all the questions. Scott Moe is running the gamut on topics, and he's making the announcements on what the party is promising and what they're going to re-up with some of these programs they've announced this week. Conversely, Carla Beck stood in front when she made her first announcement. She stood in front, and behind her were supporters and her candidates. And the NDP's putting up almost every day another candidate or two across the province in different places to try and just kind of make the media pick.
Tell me more about Sask United Party and its policies.
Well, it's interesting because, as I say, I honestly think it's the platform that a lot of Sask Party backbenchers, and by the way, there's a few of them now running for the Sask United Party, at least former Sask Party backbenchers, would have wanted. And it's heavy on the social policy agenda. They're talking about things like opting in for programs like sex education as opposed to just opting out. And they made that clear distinction. The leader, Mr. Remick, basically made his pitch in a more concise and clear way than I've seen in the past. A lot of people won't agree with it, and a lot of people will find it hugely problematic, and there is huge problems. The Sask Party could be making hay of the fact that he's basically cutting the PST in half, eliminating the gas tax, $2 billion plus hit each year, not really explaining how he's going to make up for the revenues other than, we're going to charge the potash companies more in both taxes and royalties, which never goes so big with potash companies from my limited history of the last 40 years. They can, and farther back than that. So I don't know. It's a bit naive and a bit silly to think that there's these magical solutions that haven't been tried that they now think can work.
Indigenous leaders are calling for change. It comes after 2 public servants from Meadow Lake were sent home. The reason? Both were wearing orange shirts on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Moira Whiten reports.
It's a day that is meant to honor survivors and those who died at residential schools. But leaders say it ended in disrespect for 2 First Nations employees at the Meadow Lake courthouse.
One of the ladies is a survivor, 2nd-generation survivor. And she left home that morning proud. The way I see it is they silenced her spirit. She fought to stay to work, but they eventually made her go home.
The color is meant to show solidarity with survivors on September 30th, also known as Orange Shirt Day. The Meadow Lake Tribal Council and Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations say sending the women home is unacceptable and dismisses the importance of the day.
How can we expect a system to deliver justice for Indigenous people when it refuses to acknowledge the very history that continues to harm us?
Leaders say they want this to be a learning moment and are calling for Saskatchewan to make September 30th a statutory holiday, just like it's seen federally.
But what I see is this, as many speakers have talked about, is an opportunity to educate. It's an opportunity to take a bad situation and turn it around for something good.
NDP leader Carla Beck and Saskatchewan Party leader Scott Moe both say they'd consider it if elected. And Moe says he's also thinking about adding orange shirts to a law protecting the right to wear poppies.
There is a discussion that should be had around that piece of legislation and what happened the other day with the orange shirts being removed from the courthouse.
Both women involved aren't speaking publicly out of fear for their jobs. Meanwhile, the Saskatchewan Ministry of Justice declined to comment, citing the ongoing election. Moira Whiten, CBC News.
A walk to honor the lives of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls was held in Regina this morning. The Sisters in Spirit Walk for Healing began at Mama Way Ataton Centre and ended with a ceremony at the Place of Reflection at the RCMP Heritage Centre. The ceremony included a list of names of people being remembered, along with laying roses as a tribute. The walk was hosted by the Regina Police Service, and organizers say it's an important step toward reconciliation.
You know, the 150 years of Treaty 4 and many more years prior to that, where the police have not necessarily always met the expectations of Indigenous people in the city of Regina, in the province of Saskatchewan, and across Canada. And this is one small step towards building or rebuilding those relationships to show that we do care about those individuals and that we will continue to work to solve those crimes when those crimes do occur.
This is the 4th annual Sisters in Spirit Walk in Regina. Similar walks and vigils are held on October 4th in cities across the country. Organizers say it's important to hold this event every year so people impacted know they're not alone. A Regina judge has reserved her decision about whether a court case alleging government inaction over climate change can go ahead. The case involves several environmental groups who say the government isn't doing enough to lower carbon emissions. Shlok Talati has more.
It was a packed room as the Court of King's Bench heard concerns over climate change. The government says the court case over alleged climate inaction should not go ahead. The case was launched last year by Climate Justice Saskatoon and 7 other residents. The lawsuit says 2 new gas-fired electricity power plants near Moose Jaw and Lanigan infringe on their Charter of Rights and Freedoms, specifically the right to life, liberty, and security.
I'm going to be a grandmother. My first grandchild is due next month. And I don't think you need to be a parent or a grandparent to care about the planet and the other living beings that we share it with, but it sure brings it home and makes it personal.
Saskatchewan's per capita greenhouse gas emissions are the highest in the country, 3 times the national average. Sask Power says it wants to cut the 2005 greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 and be net zero by 2050. The complainants have also asked the court to force Sask Power to prepare formal plans to decarbonize the province's electrical grid.
We take action in many ways in our lives, through personal decisions we make in our homes, through how we vote with our wallet, through certainly, most importantly, whom we vote in at election time. But when all else fails and we believe that our rights are being infringed upon, then we can also utilize the court system, which was set up for this very purpose.
It's unclear when the court might make a decision. The province would not comment on the case because an election campaign is underway. But last year, the government defended its decision to build the power plants, saying this is the most effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions without causing undue harm to our people and economy. This is the first time that a case like this has been filed against the Saskatchewan government, and the complainants say that they've relied on precedent from other parts of the country to argue for this case to go to trial. Shlok Talati, CBC News, Regina.
Well, a mild and sunny day in Saskatoon to enjoy the fall sights down by the river. Lots of leaves are turning color, but still quite a bit of green left there. Those leaves likely going to be blowing around quite a bit this weekend. Riley Lachuk will have a windy and rainy forecast for us when we come back.
This weather update is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz Regina, proud member of the Capital Automotive Group.
Well, a look over Regina this evening, where we've had actually a pretty nice day in Regina and across the province, and temperatures still sitting around 20 degrees right now. But things, yes, they are about to change in our weather picture. Weather specialist Riley Laychuk joins us now for an update on our forecast. Riley?
Well, thanks, Ethan. Certainly looking at a bit of a rough and tumble weekend a bit here, a bit of a rough ride. We'll start with the wind warning, which I'll talk about here. We have a wind warning in place for Regina, for much of southern and into southeastern Saskatchewan. We're looking at sustained winds upwards of 60, 70 kilometers an hour through Saturday. Could see gusts, though, upwards of 90 or even 100 kilometers an hour, particularly in that southeastern part of the province. We'll run some of the numbers in just a moment. All this because of an Alberta Clipper, an area of low pressure in Alberta that will skirt right across central parts of Saskatchewan, bringing some rain, maybe even some light snow, and certainly the wind, the story with this system as we get through the day on Saturday. So a bit of clouds starting to build in through the afternoon hours today. Expect that to continue as we get into the evening, into the overnight period. By first thing tomorrow morning, the center of that low really has pretty much crossed the province, and we're starting to even see some clearing back to the west, but certainly a little bit of rain, pretty short-lived. I'm thinking a couple of millimeters. Again, we'll talk numbers in just a moment, but certainly we do have all of that wind that will wreak havoc on the province, particularly the southeastern sections through the day Saturday, tapering off as we get into Sunday. Sunday, a much brighter day really across the province. Could see a little bit of instability across far northern parts of the province, but generally speaking, we are looking at a drier and a much calmer day ahead for Sunday. Okay, so here's some of the numbers. This takes us out from midnight right into the morning hours, and you can see even at midnight, we're looking at winds out of the west gusting up to 60 in places like Swift Current. Look what happens, though, as I put this in motion. First thing in the morning tomorrow, looking at west winds gusting upwards of 70 through Regina, through Assiniboia, Swift Current. And then we start to get some of those brighter blues and reds, particularly in southeastern sections. Estevan, Moosomin, looking at gusts around 80 kilometers an hour, over 80 in the Regina area. That's what's prompted this wind warning as we get through the afternoon hours. Continuing to see very gusty winds as we get through the later afternoon. And then by even the evening hours, we're starting to see the winds dropping off. And yes, a much calmer day ahead. Of course, these winds, nothing to play around with. These can bring down power lines, can easily bring down trees. So something like patio furniture in your backyard, you might want to either think about tying that down or bringing it in over the next couple of days here. Looking at rainfall accumulations, really southern parts of the province, looking at a general 2 to 5 millimeters of some of this rain. Central and northern could see a bit more. 9 degrees in Regina tomorrow, west winds 60, gusting to 80 or higher through the afternoon. And then we're back into a bit of a warm spell into the 20s through midweek next week. Much the same for Saskatoon. More in the way of rain tomorrow, but still very gusty winds, getting up to 9 in the afternoon. And then, Ethan, we're in the 20s once again as we head into next week.
Well, we will look forward to that warmer weather after this blip this weekend. Thanks, Riley. Well, developers in Switzerland are creating a robotic system that aims to make the process of building a home more sustainable. It's called impact printing. The robot shoots lumps of building material. The lumps bond together on impact and gradually form a wall up to 3 meters high. No cement or molds are required in the process. The materials used usually come from the excavation site where the home will be built, and it uses a minimal amount of additives such as silt and clay. Stay with us. We're back after the break. Welcome back. Well, if you're headed to the movies this weekend, you could check out the post-apocalyptic thriller Die Alone. It was shot in Saskatchewan last summer, and some say it's a sign the film production industry is back on its feet. Jeremy Warren reports.
Just wondering if it's safe out here alone.
I'm not alone. Got Myrtle.
That's a dangerous thing, you know, thinking the worst about people, especially in times like these.
It's part of a new wave of film productions shooting in the province. The movie's director says a new provincial film production grant is bringing movie making back to Saskatchewan.
We couldn't have made the film. Like back when I was making the Wolfcott films, you would kind of top out around the $2 million mark for a film. So, and this is a more than double that. So it would have literally been impossible to make this film here had they not revised the grant system. So I predict it's going to mean great things for our local industry.
That industry was devastated when the province cut the film tax credit in 2012. Productions left, and so did the people working behind the scenes.
The tax credit was cut back about 12 years ago. We had at that point 3 full crews. And when I say a full crew, that's typically around 75 to 100 people. Of course, because of that, a lot of people had to leave to continue to work in the industry.
In recent years, the provincial government has put taxpayer money back into local productions. Now, some in the industry say Saskatchewan can't find enough people to crew movie sets. The Saskatchewan Media Production Industry Association says some new productions are hiring rookie crews to train alongside veterans.
When Creative Saskatchewan and the province came back and reinstilled the production grant program, we ended up kind of having to rebuild. And I think Dylon was a great example. We had close to 45 or 50 people on this film that were either trainees or mentors of the trainees. It's now about building that grassroots, and attracting people to the province who maybe can't afford to live in Toronto or Vancouver anymore. And I think we're an industry that can attract young people and young families to the province.
Meanwhile, Dean says he's committed to making more films here. He's also urging movie fans to give Saskatchewan-made films a chance. Jeremy Warren, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Here's a look at some of our wake-up temperatures. First thing in the morning, I know I say temperatures, take some of these with a grain of salt because it'll feel a lot colder with some of that wind coming in. So 6 o'clock in the morning, 12s and 14s through the Parklands region into southeastern parts of the province. 10 to start the day in Regina. Temperatures falling back a bit as we get through the day with some of that rain. 8s in North Battleford and Kindersley. For Regina tomorrow, 7 by 8 o'clock in the morning. West winds 60, gusting to 80. Really not getting much better than 9 tomorrow afternoon. Could even get a 10 out of that, but temperatures really being held back by some of that rain. Saskatoon starting at 7 tomorrow, by noon also 7 degrees and a bit more sunshine by the time we get to the afternoon. But Ethan, once again, some very gusty winds.
Yeah, we'll be making sure that patio furniture is bolted down. Okay, thanks, Riley. And that is it for us this week. For news anytime, you can always head to cbc.ca/sask, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or download the CBC News app. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.